Hey you, yeah you who clicked on this video. Thanks for giving our channel a shot. And if you will, please do us the honor of watching the video all the way through. Appreciate it. Now onto the video.
Hello, fellow 8-bit heroes. Today we are going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, how it did at the box office, even though it had a simultaneous streaming release, and what that really means for the movie industry going forward. So let's get into it. So I told you guys back in March of this year that I personally believed that, based on the market analysis, that video game movies were basically going to take the supremacy away from comic book movies. And in that particular situation, I think that, I was right. We can just, chalk that off. And the reason I can say that wholeheartedly, besides the fact that Sonic 1 did well and Sonic 2 did well and the Mario movie did well, is because a little known property released last weekend, Five Nights at Freddy's. And this movie was put together by Jason Blum and Blumhouse. They are very well known for making profitable horror movies. In particular, this movie was very profitable because it only had a budget of about $20 million. So we'll double that budget so that we can include marketing. And so let's just be conservative and say that the budget was $40 million. Opening for this movie was $70 million. $70 million at the box office on opening weekend, and that's with a simultaneous streaming release on Peacock. So all of the people that always have the same old excuses of, oh, well, our movie didn't do well because it had a simultaneous streaming release, blah, blah, blah. No, this movie proves that that is hogwash. That is just an excuse. So this movie did particularly well. It's, like I say, it's a video game property. It was made on the cheap, and it had, it had a really good response from its built-in fan base, because this movie does what a lot of comic book movies refuse to do. And I hate to say this because I know that you guys love the MCU. I know it. But the MCU has never, and I do repeat, never followed the comic book canon for these characters. And so when you see the difference in the idea that these video game properties seem to not only be able to be creative with what they're doing, but also follow the canon, it is very interesting to see the results. And what also makes this movie interesting is that, even though I saw it with my kids, by the way, my kids are big Five Nights at Freddy's fans, but what makes this very interesting is that this movie isn't particularly groundbreaking of any sort, but what it does do is, A, it caters to its fan base, B, follows the source material, and C, it doesn't introduce any type of propaganda or political messaging or social messaging of any kind. It's just telling a story and allowing the audience to be entertained. And I think that is what makes this movie interesting and special, is the fact that it's just a movie. It's just a movie. And that is why this movie is doing well. Everybody's talking about comic book fatigue, superhero fatigue, whatever. That's not why the superhero genre is failing. The superhero genre is failing is because it's boring, Huey. It's boring because you are taking something that people love and you are jamming your messaging into it constantly. And because of that, people have now woken up. They've been slow to do it. The NPCs are slow, but they eventually get there. You see that with the recent South Park episode, that, the NPCs and the normies, they have caught on. And now that they have caught on, they are done with it. And they're done with it because of all of this political messaging, all of this social commentary, all of this faux diversity where there doesn't need to be any. Just tell the story. And so that's what Five Nights at Freddy's did. And we see the results. A movie that not only is made on a lower budget, but also very profitable. It's profitable out of the gate. Its first weekend, it was profitable. When have you ever seen a Marvel property or DC property or a comic book property be profitable from the first weekend? It is not a thing. And so there's a lot to be learned from this. And I know the studios are paying attention, especially with this strike going on. This strike was nothing but a purge for dead weight, essentially, because these studios know that the ESG money is drying up. They know that their shareholders are unhappy with stock prices falling, especially like in the case of Disney, and they know that they have to make a certain amount of money going forward. And so with that being said, start milking these video game companies for all they're worth, all of these properties for all they're worth, like they did the comic book industry. But the difference is that unlike the comic book industry, which didn't really have a lot of financial leverage and thus not a lot of creative control because they lack that leverage, the video game industry is different. The video game industry is a billion or multi-billion, $100 billion entity. That whole genre is literally worth hundreds of billions of dollars depending on what properties you're looking at. And so they will have the ability to leverage that type of creative control, whereas the comic book industry, which was already on the decline when the comic book movie really started to become in fashion, the video game industry won't have those same problems where they're basically, on life support and thus have to, do whatever the studios say. And I think that's really going to be the difference maker. That's what's going to give the video game movie legs as far as them able to deliver a quality product to their fan base. And I think that in addition to that, because the video games are already so profitable, video game publishers will more than likely be looking at their properties or at movies centered around their properties as more of an add-on than a primary focus. And I think that is really what's going to help. And a lot of these publishers, like Sony, they already have parts of their global conglomerate that do movies like Sony Pictures. So I think that that's really going to go a long way when it comes to video game movies and how profitable and how entertaining they can be. So really just providing that quality product to the fans is really going to make the big difference. So, I mean, I'm really optimistic about this. I really don't want the comic book movie to go anywhere, mostly because I feel like it was never really explored to begin with. I feel like if the MCU is the example, I know that, again, I know a lot of you are not going to agree with me on this, but I don't really view the MCU as a successful experiment because they never really made a comic book movie. I think there are very few and far between that you could consider comic book movies. And when I say comic book, I mean trying their best to be comic book accurate, basically being accurate to the source material, accurate to the characters. And I think that the MCU kind of took characters that they really liked and then kind of just put whatever type of personality, whatever type of storyline, whatever type of narrative they wanted to on top of those characters. And that's mostly, I think, why the actors that portrayed these particular characters became almost irreplaceable in certain aspects. And I don't mean all of them, but that's mostly why, because you were basically starting from scratch. It's not like you were telling the classic Iron Man story, the classic Captain America story. It started that way. I mean, you definitely see all the bones of that in the original Captain America movie and the original Iron Man movie, but after that it kind of just goes in its own direction, and I feel like that's what really kind of elevated the actor over the character. But let me know what you guys think, whether or not you think that the video game movie is definitely going to be taking the place of the comic book movie. And we'll have the original video where we talk about that linked at the end of this video. So if you want to check that out, definitely do so. And again, just sound off in the comment section and tell us what you thought about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. And if you really do believe that based on the last few examples, Five Nights at Freddy's, the Mario movie, Sonic the Hedgehog, that the video game movie is definitely on the rise. We'll see you on the next one. 8-Bit Heroes out. Peace.
If you'd like to get a shout out on the channel, then hit that like button, maybe share it with a couple of friends, and do us the biggest honor of all, and subscribe to the channel so you can join the 8-Bit Heroes family. And while you're at it, hit that bell icon so you can be notified when our new videos come out.